How you prepare for a golf tournament?
Well, I hit balls maybe 20 minutes, putt a little bit, smoke 4 or 5 cigarettes, drink 3 Diet Cokes, and go to the first tee. Some days I won't even go to the range.
Thank you, Mr. John Daly, for that. As we welcome you into a Friday edition here of Puck Sports, we appreciate you watching on YouTube, listening whenever you are, devouring this award-winning podcast on Apple, Spotify, wherever you find your podcast. It is the Daily Puck Drop, hashtag the DPD, Friday, June 21st, also known as, some would say, Freedom Day, because it is the last day of school, at least in the Seattle public schools. The last day for the vampire, the 10-year-old O-Dub, who is now the final year and now a middle schooler. Final day of elementary school, last day of 5th grade. It is episode 173 of the Daily Puck Drop. Yes, it's a very emotional day here in the Puckett household because it is the last time our child, our youngest child now, we're out of elementary school. We are done with one of the great elementary schools that our fine city has, Loyal Heights Elementary. Shout out to everyone. We're big in the Loyal Heights elementary community. So anyone that has ever attended, gone to that school, taught at that school, our long run is over at Loyal Heights Elementary. It's there's some sadness, I think, today that it's finally over. I think there's some happiness from the kids that today is the last day of school, also last day for high school for the teenager. But then also they're home all the time. Now they're here all summer. The only thing that I relish a little bit is I don't have to make lunches anymore. I didn't have to make so much lunches so much for the teenager anymore, but obviously for the vampire, for the 10-year-old, I had to make a lot of lunches. So I'm kind of glad that I'm off lunch duty a little bit. For a little bit. But then when we get back into the, towards September, I like it. I like making a lunch. I like making it the night before and, what kind of sandwich can we craft today? But you kind of are on summer break now as a parent. But again, they're always around and you got to find stuff for them to do. Thank God we're playing, that's the hat I'm wearing right now if you're watching. Thank God we're playing the old Ballard All-Stars right now, so we can get away with just doing baseball here for the next month or so, and that will kind of take some time out and keep him occupied. But then it's just, what are we going to do today? I don't know. You figure it out. Get on your bike and roll around. All right. Again, episode 173 here on the Daily Puck Drop. We got the Mariners. We'll talk about that. Cool scene last night in baseball. We'll give you an update on the KPMG PGA Championship there at Servais. A soundbite yesterday there from Micah Garafolo, as we were talking to Mike on his weekly appearance there on Thursdays about Dak Prescott. It's an interesting, I think a real interesting conversation about Dak Prescott, because I had just asked Mike, hey, if he's available in a year from now, if he doesn't do anything with his contract and he plays out the final year of his contract and then he'll be a free agent, would 2 teams in the NFC West be interested in him? One, of course, being Seattle, the other one being the Rams. I'll let you know what he said about that. And then, of course, we wrap up every Daily Puck Drop with the Hey, What the Puck there at the end of the episode. It is a Friday, so that means Chris Egan stopping by. Big thanks to Fat Zach's Pizza. And then also Ryan Divish of the Seattle Times, live from Miami, where I've texted him earlier this morning. He says it's humid and sticky, and I'm sweating through all my T-shirts. And, of course, his weekly appearance brought to you by Chalet Bowl, chaletbowl.com. Make your next reservation there at chaletbowl.com. Let's get to the Mariners. They lose to the Guardians yesterday 6-3. They dropped the series. So hopefully that doesn't come to haunt them there at the end of the season with the tiebreaker. Of course, the Guardians and the Mariners battling it out for that second spot there in the playoffs so they can avoid playing in that first week of the wild card games. 44-33, so still 11 games over 500. But right now their lead has now dipped now to 8 games over the Houston Astros, 8.5 games up on Texas. Cleveland again clinched that series 4 games to 2, or the season series, I should say. Got off to a great start yesterday. Dylan Moore with the 2-run home run. Dylan Moore will factor into the game a little bit later on a decision by Scott Servais that he made to make it 2-0. But really, the story of the game was Luis Castillo just did not have it yesterday. And it has been a theme this year for Mariners pitching on the road, because their numbers on the road compared to home are vastly different. I mean, it's damn near 2 runs. Mariners pitchers on the road have an ERA of 4.62 compared at home where it's 2.54. So something to kind of file away once they get into the postseason. That as dominant as they have been, and they have been dominant, most of it has come at home and not so much on the road. And Castillo kind of found himself again yesterday in trouble. I don't know if it had anything to do with Mitch Garver catching him. He did not throw his four-seam fastball as much yesterday in that game. They talked about that on the broadcast yesterday, that he wasn't throwing that as much as he normally does. So I don't know if that was the game plan going in that they had discussed, or was that a decision by Mitch Garver, who was catching him for the very first time. In fact, for Mitch Garver, it was the first time he caught anyone other than George Kirby. Maybe with that a little bit of a factor, maybe a little feeling out process between Mitch Garver there and Luis Castillo. We'll talk to Divish about that today when he's done sweating in Miami, just about were they on the same page, were they not on the same page? Whatever. Castillo, again, just was not sharp from the get-go. He was in trouble right away. Quan had the leadoff double. Jimenez ends up getting a single. They end up scoring 1 run out of there. And then they got to the second inning, and our guy Will Brennan had to knock one out.
There you
Brennan
go.
With a drive to deep right field. Wave goodbye. Will Brennan, home run number 7 on the year.
Yeah, pound sand, Will Brennan. He would get into trouble a little bit later in the game. Of course, that's Bally Sports, Great Lakes. We appreciate the highlights there. They don't know we're using the highlights, but we're using them anyway. Bally Sports, Great Lakes. Jimenez was kind of the final nail in the coffin. Not kind of. He was the final nail in the coffin against Luis Castillo yesterday.
Jimenez gets into one, deep center field. Rodriguez back. He's out of room. It's out of here.
So again, Luis Castillo roughed up yesterday in his outing. Not a typical Luis Castillo pitching performance yesterday against the Guardians. The Guardians are just a damn good team. I mean, they are. I mean, they just kind of do everything right. There really doesn't feel like that there's one aspect of their game, especially offensively, that they're not really good at. And it starts from the get-go with Stephen Kwan, who is batting damn near 400. He'll qualify, I think, next week for the batting title, but they're just relentless, just nonstop. They put pressure on you from the get-go. And so they are going to be, if that is a playoff preview, that is going to be a damn tough out. And the Mariners, again, I'm going to touch on that again, because it has been a theme all season long, has been these splits on the road between home and away. Now, it makes sense because of the ballpark at I always want to say Safeco. I never want to say T-Mobile. But the ballpark at T-Mobile, because it's big and it's a pitcher's park. But again, those numbers, 2.54 at home and a 4.62 ERA there on the road. We mentioned the decision by Scott Servais. And forgive me if I didn't see exactly, I didn't see the explanation why he decided to do this. If it was somewhere and I missed it, maybe in the paper, I missed it in the video, at least the post-game video that they showed up on MLB.com, then I apologize. I didn't see the Root Sports post-game show last night, so maybe he addressed it there. But there was the decision by Scott Servais, with the game still very much on the line. They were down 5-3, top of the 7th inning. Robles had got on with a single. Ryan Bliss had drawn a walk. JP then flies out, so there's 1 out. So you got runners at first and second. The left-hander, Tim Herron's replaced by right-hander Cade Smith. Now, because of how they have done things this year, and this is why I think for a lot of people, having not watched the game live, having just kind of watched it later, but looking back at kind of the social media posts about this, I think a lot of people were curious of, why did you not pinch hit him? I mean, you've got now a right-hander up there who's now throwing in Smith against Dylan Moore. And you have had this philosophy all season long of pinch hitting guys constantly. I mean, it's kind of been clockwork that the little book tells you, okay, we've got, we got plenty of options on the bench, and he did have options on the bench. I mean, Dylan Moore was playing third base, but he had an option in left-hander Josh Rojas. He had an option in Luke Raley. He had an option in Dom Canzone if he elected to go there. But he decided not to. He decided to leave Dylan Moore in that situation to face the right-hander. Now, looking back at the numbers, I know why he did it, but then there's another set of numbers to say, well, that doesn't really make sense. Why did you do that? Well, Moore is hitting 167 in his last 14 games. So last 14 games, he's not been good anywhere. He is now 272 and 563. No, but I'm going to get to the road numbers in a second because that's why he ended up doing it. He's hitting 200 against right-handers. He's batting 235 against with runners in scoring position, and he's batting 211 with men on. Now, so those would suggest, well, why would you have done that? He hasn't done anything against right-handers, and he hasn't done anything with men in scoring position. Rojas against right-handers this year, 282, with runners in scoring position, almost batting 300. Luke Raley hitting 333 with runners in scoring position. So those numbers would all appear much better options to go against the right-hander. But the reason that Scott Servais did it was because that Dylan Moore on the road this season has been torrid. He's hitting 272. He's slugging 563, 6 home runs and 16 RBIs. So that's why he did it. Now, it's curious that he would use that as his metric to keep him in there because he's been on the road. But, okay, if that's what you want to do, maybe. And I'll say this about Scott Servais. If it was a gut feeling that he just kind of felt because Dylan Moore has put up these good numbers on the road and because he had the home run earlier in the game that he had a good feeling about Dylan Moore, fine. I don't mind that. I don't mind Servais or any manager kind of managing the game on feel and gut because that still is very much a part of it. I mean, we can't have it both ways with him sometimes. I mean, we will get up there and bitch and moan, if he, like Raley or Rojas when they were red hot and he wouldn't play them against left-handers, or if they brought in a left-hander in a situation, they would pitch hit for him, because then we're screaming, no, let those guys are hot. Let them hit. So I don't know if we can do it here necessarily here. My only counter to it would be, yes, his numbers are good on the road for sure. There's no debating that. But he hasn't done anything in the last 14 games. Not the biggest deal in the world. I just think in that situation, I think looking back on it, because you have a guy that plays third anyways in Rojas, I think the wise decision there, I think the correct decision would have been to pinch hit with Josh Rojas for Dylan Moore. Now, it's easier. Hindsight is always easier. It's always easier to manage a game from your couch, sitting in your car, listen to as you're driving. But I think that if he could have that one back, maybe that's the one he would like to have back. Our Bet M's under summer tour continues, but we took one on the chin last night again, even though that the line was it 6.5 last night, 7.5 last night? Well, we lost. It was 8.5 there last night. So we take that, we lose. We're 22, 24, and 2 now on the season we dropped another one last night, but that's okay. We'll just keep betting away because that's what we do. We always bet on the under. Now the Mariners will be starting up a series with the Marlins tonight, game 1 of their 3-game series. And it's a game in which, because they had a left-hander yesterday against Cleveland, and then they get 3 straight left-handers against the Marlins. So they have 4 straight games where they're facing left-handers. And then the total for the Mariners tonight against the Marlins, because I have to pull it up because I almost forgot to write it down, what the total of the game was going to be tonight, is 7.5. So line is 7.5 total tonight. Take the under. M's Bet Summer under tour continues, and we'll try to creep back to 500. George Kirby on the mound, 6-5 with a 3.54 ERA against Trevor Rogers. And again, all three starters for the Marlins, all left-handers, Rogers, Luzardo, and Garrett. All right, the highlights yesterday, moving on to the other baseball game from Rickwood Field yesterday between the Giants and the Cardinals. This was, of course, honoring the legacy of the Negro Leagues and the legacy of Willie Mays, and they honored Willie Mays there. They honored the Birmingham Barons who played there, the Birmingham Barons of the Negro League. Oldest park in the United States. Of course, as I mentioned before, the Barons played there. Real powerful stuff. One, just an awesome looking stadium from a visual perspective, not only just yesterday in Fox's coverage of it, but if you're watching MLB Central yesterday and MLB Network for the last week and a half, and they were showing shots of it and all the renovations that they did to the ballpark, just looks awesome. And the thing, like following it here in the last week or so that they've been doing stories on it, I didn't know, really fully grasp the rich history of baseball in that part of the country, in Alabama. I didn't fully understand all of it. Jake Peavy was a part of their show for the last week or two, describing it. He grew up like in the same town. That is, Hank Aaron was there, Willie Mays, Satchel Paige, like all in this area. It is incredible. And then just the figures, the Hall of Famers, the special players that all played on that park back in the day. Real cool, visually cool. The sight lines, all of it, big ballpark. And kudos to Major League Baseball for pulling that off. And kudos to Fox as well, because really the biggest thing that came out of that yesterday was just some powerful stuff from Reggie Jackson. And Reggie Jackson was on the set there with Fox. He was along there with, Kevin Burkhardt, David Ortiz, Alex Rodriguez, Derek Jeter, and then King Griffey Jr. was up there. And and Bonds was up there as well. I can't remember. I don't know if Ortiz was up there. But Bonds and Griffey were up there later. And then also Bonds and Griffey were honored on the field there with Willie Mays' son. But Reggie Jackson detailing and sharing his experience about playing in Birmingham in the 60s when he was drafted by the when he was drafted by the A's and playing in the minor leagues there was some of the most powerful television you are ever going to watch. And if you haven't seen it, I would go on the internet and find it. And I would strongly suggest you don't find the censored version of it. Find the uncensored version of it. Because he repeatedly says, the N-word and what he was called. What he was called going into establishments in the South. When he was denied to go into restaurants, when he was denied to go into stores, when he was denied to go into Charlie Finley's country club, and the word and what was described to him every single time. And that's 1967. Really not that long ago when you think about it. And I just thought it was 5 or 6 minutes, however long that segment was, of some of the best sports television that has ever been out there. And I think it took a lot of courage and guts, I think, for everyone on that set, but I think for Reggie Jackson to really detail what it was like, because what kind of sparked it was, I think it was Alex Rodriguez that asked him the question, what comes to mind when you come back here? And he just, a lot of mixed emotions and a lot of heartbreak, because he's trying to, as a young person, as a young man, make his way in the sport of baseball, make his way as a young black man in the 60s playing in the South, and has to endure what he had to endure on every single day. And again, I can't remember who asked the question about, well, did it, or I think he had brought it up that someone had said to him, not anybody on the panel, said, hey, did it make you a better person, make you a stronger person, what you went through? Did it help you? And he said, no, I wish I'd never would have to go through that to become, there's other ways I could become a strong person, not having people say those things about me. So that was, if you missed it, find the uncensored version and just watch it. That was raw and real and good stuff. because we have a checkered past in this country and continue to have a checkered past, and especially that sport of baseball as well. So good job there by Fox, that whole crew, Major League Baseball, Reggie Jackson, and everything. Over to golf here real quick. KPMG PGA Championship. Alexi Thompson, round 1 leader at 4 under. Our girl smoking that heater, Charlie Hall, only 2 shots back after the first round. Round 2 at Sahali, which looked fantastic on television, by the way. I recorded that, watched a little bit of it. It looked fabulous. God, I hope the PGA can come back someday, maybe the championship or just something. Because I think the way that course is designed, even though it's not the longest course in the world, I mean, yesterday that was playing like a U.S. Open. There's just things that you can do to it because it is so tight, and then you can grow up the rough, and you can make areas around that course, even though it doesn't have the length that these guys are used to, you can make it penal. But it looked fabulous on television yesterday. Just weather, all of it. The aerial shots, it just looked great. So coverage starts at 1 o'clock today on Peacock before switching over to the Golf Channel there at 3 o'clock. All right, to Dak Prescott as a Seahawk in 2025. Yay or nay? We talked about it yesterday with Mike Garafolo of the NFL Network. 2 teams in the NFC West, the Rams and the Seahawks.
Could potentially be, yeah. Yeah. I'm sure Seahawk fans would like to draft their own guy. The problem is the team has just been too good. You got to be in position to make that happen, right? Like you got to, and even in a year like this year that just passed, teams that if they wanted to get into the top 3 couldn't get there because those teams wouldn't trade. They just wouldn't give up those spots. I mean, teams were trying. I'm shocked, and I said this to you probably weeks to months before the draft. If those 3 teams sat there and it went 1, 2, 3 the way it did.
That was, again, Garafolo talking about maybe the possibility of Dak Prescott in a Seahawks uniform. And I had just asked him because we were discussing quarterbacks. It was the whole Trevor Lawrence discussion about, hey, he's now the highest paid he has set the market now for quarterbacks, tied now with Burrow, average per year. Who's going to top that? Tua's probably not going to get there, but he thinks that Jordan Love now is going to surpass him. And it's just, again, it's not based on are they really worth it. It's just, again, the next quarterback in line for the most part sets the bar. Dak Prescott has been a big storyline because he hasn't reached any deal here with Dallas. Some believe that he would just play out this last season and then go into free agency in 2025 at the age of 31. How appealing would he be to NFL teams out there? And I think Mike brought up a good point about, when Tom Brady was a free agent, there wasn't a ton of teams that were knocking on his door to get him because a lot of these teams have already, positioned themselves with a quarterback. They already have a starting quarterback. And so we started looking at all the list of teams that don't have a quarterback or may not have a quarterback in a year. There's not a lot. I mean, he mentioned Carolina. If Carolina wanted to pull the plug already on Bryce Young, I don't know. Would you pull the plug on a guy? I don't think they're going to do it after 2 years. Pull the plug on him. Now, the owner's crazy, so I don't know. Could be a possibility. But you look at the 2 teams in the NFC West, depending what happens here with Matt Stafford in the next year and his deal, could the Rams and the Seahawks be 2 teams in a year from now? If Prescott is a free agent, would they be willing to open up their checkbooks to sign him? Now, I don't think Seattle would do it. I don't think they're going to spend ever. I think they will do whatever they possibly can to avoid ever spending that type of money again on a quarterback. I think that they would do it on a guy that they drafted, get the few years where they don't got to pay him anything and then sign him. But I don't think that they're going to go out and write a huge check, whatever that would be, if Prescott would become a free agent 25 and open that up. But here's the thing with Dak Prescott. He is a real polarizing figure, I think, in the NFL. Is he not? Because I think there are 2 different camps. One who think he's probably overrated and others who think he gets a bad rap. I mean, he plays on the most recognizable team in the NFL, maybe one of the most recognizable, you can make this argument, recognizable teams, in the world. Is he unfairly criticized for his play? I think you can make an argument that he is. He's coming off a season in 23 where he threw for over 4,500 yards, 36 touchdowns, and had 9 picks. That was a pretty damn good season. Okay, the year before that, he missed, 4 or 5 games. 2 years ago, he had another strong season. I agree with kind of what Mike said, though. I think Seattle and how they view it want to have their own guy. They want to draft their own guy. The problem with that is they never draft anyone. But to counter it is that Mike is correct that they never get up in the draft to actually get anybody. What we do know, I think, here with Seattle, and one of the big storylines, going into not only just this year, but I think as this year plays out and as we get into next year, and really just the future of Mike McDonald as the head coach, and then the future now of John Schneider, who's running everything now, I think it's safe to say that the quarterback of the future is not on this roster. And when will they find that guy? When can they pull the trigger on it? I mean, Geno Smith is fine. He's serviceable, but he's not the future. In all likelihood, Sam Howell's not the future. I mean, Washington got rid of him because they didn't believe in him, so they could go get Jaden Daniels. So it's correct to say that whoever's going to be the quarterback in 3-4 years, 5 years, is not on the roster right now. They've got to solve that riddle at some point. It's hard when you're good and you're not picking up in the top 10. Sometimes, though, at some point they've got to get aggressive and move up and try to grab somebody. I think that's why a lot of people thought they would do that with Michael Penix this year, that they would be uber aggressive to go get him, even though, and those people that said don't draft Penix, you're right, there were other issues on this football team. But you need a quarterback. You need a quarterback desperately. They don't have a true franchise quarterback yet. It is their missing piece, and they've got to find it fairly soon, hopefully. Over to the NBA, JJ Redick. How about this surprise? Named new Lakers coach. You don't say. No way. He has to be, correct, the first ever NBA head coach of his team with a star player that he also co-hosts a podcast with. I'm fascinated how this dynamic is going to work. It doesn't really matter who they would have hired if it was Dan Hurley or Red Auerbach. LeBron James runs that team. And I don't care if you're the best, even if they hired Greg Popovich. Maybe Popovich would have been the only one that could have, had complete control and say what they're going to do with the roster. Maybe. But, I mean, push comes to shove and Redick wants to do something his way, but LeBron wants to do it the other way. Who do you think wins out? Well, of course LeBron's going to win out. He's got all the equity. The coaches in the NBA have no power over their players at all. I mean, especially that sport. I mean, the other sports they do, but not this one. And this is just another long list, especially his time with the Lakers, that LeBron James has gone through a bunch of head coaches. I mean, early on in his career, you can say, all right, well, that kind of happens. But, Paul Silas, Mike Brown, goes to the Heat. He's got Eric Spoelstra. Now he leaves the Heat, so there's nothing really happens there. But remember, he goes back to Cleveland. They get David Blatt. Remember David Blatt? I think it was in the European League somewhere. Always has got this great basketball mind. I can't even remember how long Blatt lasted. I don't even know if he lasted a year. Then he wants Tyronn Lue. They get Tyronn Lue, and then they win a championship, but that doesn't last. The problem has been for LeBron is when he's gone to the Lakers. So they go to the Lakers. Who do they get? So he's been there for 6 years. He's on his 4th coach now. Luke Walton, Frank Vogel. And remember, Walton wasn't tough enough on the players. Okay, so they got rid of him. So then they get a guy who is known to be a little bit tougher on the players, and Frank Vogel. Well, that didn't turn out. Now they need more of a kind of a tough love but players guy. So Darvin Ham gets the job. He's let go. And now JJ Redick. He's been with the Lakers for 6 years, and he's on his 4th coach. Who's the problem? I mean, it's him. He's the problem. They probably would have been best served, and I'd love to see it, is just make him player coach. Who is the last player coach, by the way? Is it Wilkins? Is it Lenny Wilkins? Has anyone done it since Lenny Wilkins? I doubt it. But just make him player coach because he is the coach of the team. He's running it. And again, I just don't know. I don't know what situation is for JJ Redick. Is it a lose-lose? Because, again, if they win, all the credit goes to LeBron. if they lose, he gets blamed for all of it because it's his fault. It's not LeBron's fault. It's not his management team of handpicking players. It'll be the head coach's fault. So we'll see. We'll see how that goes. Plenty of guys there's been examples of guys with not a lot of experience jumping in the NBA and having success. Pat Riley with the Lakers would be the prime example. Doc Rivers had success in the NBA without having coach. So I think Redick will do okay. He sounds like, you guys all watch him and listen to him. He knows what he's talking about. We'll see. And I bet he's young enough he'll translate to the younger players there in the NBA. All right, we wrap it up here with Hey, What the Puck here on the Daily Puck Drop, #DPD. Last day we mentioned this of the Vampire Elementary School. Man, it goes fast. Off to middle school now. It's crazy. Crazy that he'll be going into 6th grade next season, like he's some type of athlete next year. Everyone says it. And parents, if you're watching or listening, you've heard it a million times. You've probably told it to other people. Just take it all in because it goes fast. And every time I would hear that from someone, I'd be like, okay, fine, I got you. But it does. It really, really does. It flies by. It feels like yesterday's kids in preschools, first day of kindergarten. We had their little graduation ceremony yesterday. Yes, we'll talk to Egan about why 5th graders have a graduation ceremony, but it's fine. It was really well done. They did a slideshow with all the pictures of them like as infants, and then their first day of kindergarten, and then where they're at now. And it's just, God, there wasn't a dry eye in the damn place. I'm sitting there just, lower chins, trembling and shaking, and you get emotional as a parent. It's cool and terrifying to watch your kids grow up. And I'm super proud of them, proud of my daughter too, but just proud of the kids that they are because they're just great kids. They're great kids. Like every kid, they've got their moments, but they're so much fun, and they got great personalities, and they got their head on straight, and it's fun. And I'm going to miss it. Going to miss elementary school. Excited for middle school to see what kind of trouble he's going to get into, because middle school for me, or junior high for me, that was the time. That was the time where I was a real a-hole and got into a lot of trouble. So we're going to see if the apple doesn't fall far from the tree starting next year at Whitman Middle School. Excuse me, Mr. Puckett, this is the principal for Whitman. You want to come down here? We would like to talk to you about Owen. Something about lighting toilet paper on fire in the boys' bathroom. Thank you. Appreciate it. I'm expecting a few phone calls. Not going to lie. Chambers Bay set to host the 2028 U.S. Amateur Floorball. Great. Just throwing crumbs at the Pacific Northwest. Yes, it's a fine event, and it's fun, and congratulations to those that will be playing in it. But Jesus, no one cares. Stop it. Just partner up with somebody else. Please tell the USGA to pound sand and move on. You know what I want Chambers Bay to do? And I don't know who came up with this first, but I'm going to give credit to somebody. Pause there for a sip of coffee. I'm going to give credit to a famed Associated Press scribe, Tim Booth. I don't know if he was the first one to come up with this idea, but I just remember recalling having a conversation with him thinking, hey, Tim, that's a smart idea. And it's amazing a guy from Central Washington can come up with that. That's a shot at Central. It's unnecessary. Chambers Bay should do whatever they can to position themselves for the Ryder Cup, because I think September, first of all, in this area is beautiful. That is an awesome Ryder Cup venue. All the weird, crazy shots that can happen. I think it'd be spectacular. Spectacular Ryder Cup venue. So be really cool. All the boats out there. Yeah, I don't know. I think that's the way they should position themselves. Ryder Cup. Hell, I think you know what? As long as, you see this marriage between Liv and the PGA Tour now, why not reach out to Liv? I would. Why not? And if you reach out to Liv and then the USGA says, if you do that, we'll never do business with you again, fine. They're not going to. the U.S. Open, men's Open, is never coming back. We went through this. It's already out till 2043. It's not coming. They're going to only their traditional course. And no disrespect to the women's U.S. Open, but it's not the same juice. So, yeah, call up Liv, call up Greg Norman. Hell, Norman was on the call for the U.S. Open because he was the analyst for Fox. Jerry DiPoto, how about this news? I think it was Mariners Muse on Twitter. Good follow, by the way. Snarky little sons of bitches, that Mariners Muse. I enjoy them quite very much. So whoever runs that account, well done. Jerry, I saw it from them. Jerry DiPoto was photographed with agent Scott Boras in Modesto watching the Nuts play. What could that be? And they looked like they were kind of in deep conversation. What's old DiPoto and Scott Boras cooking up? Or could it be what I hope it is, fingers crossed, an extension for Cal Raleigh? Please, 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 please. That's what I'm choosing to believe, that he was sitting there talking to Scott Boras to lock up Cal Raleigh. That would be real neat stuff. Come on, Jerry, make it happen. Scott Boras, make it happen. Cal Raleigh wants to make it happen. Finally, on Hey, What the Puck? How about this story? Because I want to believe in the best of people, but I know there's many out there that feel the same way that I do. But it never stops me from giving money, because I'm a sucker for this, especially if I indirectly know the person. But when you get the tweet or the email or text for, hey, support so-and-so's GoFundMe page, they're sick, do you give money right away? Or do you go, this doesn't feel right and I think I'm getting scammed, I'm not going to give money? Or are you like me, this could be a scam, but I feel guilty if I don't give money, so I'm going to give money? There is always a moment that I've got to question whether or not I'm being scammed or not on these GoFundMes, because there's a lot that come out. There's a lot of these. God, can't pay my medical bills. I need help. Well, there's a case that just happened here in the state of Washington. This woman was just arrested like 2 weeks ago. Her name is Tara Michelle Inoka. She's a mom of 4 in our great state of Washington. She has been charged with defrauding the public of more than $25,000, falsely claiming that she had breast cancer and cervical cancer. From the state of Washington, she not only created a video, she had a website, she had a whole hashtag, Stand with Tara, everything. And she got caught. They realized that she made the whole thing up, and she was arrested on June 6th in charge. Now, again, I want to know from you, when you see the GoFundMes, what's your first and immediate reaction to them? Like right away pay? Or like, I got to do some digging on this and maybe I'll pay? Or I feel this is not right, but I'm going to pay anyways because I feel guilty about it. And how many of these are scams? Because, I mean, she got caught, but how many people have gotten away with this? They're just doing, hey, I need to GoFundMe and I'm dying, so I need money. Probably more often than not, right? Probably more often than we realize. So there it is. That's Hey, What the Puck, as we wrap up the Daily Puck Drop here on Friday, June 21st, episode 173. Coming up later, we'll talk to Ryan Divish live from Miami. Did I say live? Not live from Miami. We'll record him from Miami to discuss the M series there with the Marlins, wrapping up the Guardians, looking ahead. What are they going to do? What's the status of Brian Wu, backup catcher, all those things, with a very sweaty Ryan Divish from a humid Miami. And then later today, as we do it every Friday, Sunshine and Joy, the great Chris Egan from King 5 will join us, and those episodes will be up later this afternoon. Wherever you find your podcast, wherever you watch and view this, YouTube, Apple, Spotify, wherever you find your podcasts. And, of course, all of it up at pucksports.com. Thank you for another edition of the Daily Puck Drop. Everybody have a wonderful weekend. We'll talk to you again on Monday. As always, we promise to be better.
No shirt, no shoes, no dice.
Would anybody like to smoke some pot?
Yeah. I was born to love you.
I was born to lick your face. I was born to rub you. But you were born to rub me first.
What do you need my address for?
We'd like to send out a mailer.
Mother of mercy, I don't speak Japanese!